to a leadership training seminar that was hosted by the county. Was it last week or
Last week.
Nobody
Yeah.
sent me an invite.
Well, I think they have limited seating, so they,
These had people from different
Yeah.
committees and commissions on it.
Hey,
which was good.
It was excellent, really good. I didn't know.
It was different.
I've had good trainings before.
You can start.
Acronym or something.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, and it's not even 6 o'clock yet. You're doing great. Well, it's just now turning 6 o'clock.
Very good, Chuck. Very good.
Good.
All right. Is Ruth ready?
Right on time here.
We're going to call to order the September 16th, 2014 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Gary, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Pasiak,
here.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Here.
Commissioner Merritt,
Here.
and Commissioner Rulewich.
Here. First item of business is minutes, approval of minutes from the August 8th, 2014 regular meeting. Anyone have comments on the minutes? No? Chair will entertain a motion.
I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I abstain.
Thank you. Item 5 is staff report.
There is no staff report at this time.
Thank you.
Do we have four?
I believe we do have a quorum. Is that correct? Yes, 4 is the minimum. I would like the commission to entertain the idea of taking item 6B in front of item 6A, as 6A might take some time. Does anyone have an objection to that?
No.
No objection.
All right. Then we'll start with item 6B, which is rezone of approximately 1.53 acres from commercial light to commercial heavy. The applicant would like to add a 30-foot by 34-foot steel building for the purpose of providing cover for 2 existing car lifts. Can we have a staff report, please? Sorry. I think we got her off guard.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you, you have an application by Dog K LLC, Doug and Anita Jones, for rezoning 1.53 acres located here on State Route 89, immediately north of Tim's used car sales lot. The subject parcel is in the north half of Section 22, Township 16 North, Range 2 West. It's currently, and has for some time now, been used as an auto repair shop. The applicant would like to add a building, whoops. This structure, this is the existing, and the applicant is requesting the ability to add this structure. Because this property is currently zoned commercial light, it's a auto repair is a non-conforming use. This is a legal non-conformity, and in order to be able to add this structure over some outside lifts that he has, he needs to bring his zoning into compliance with his use. The applicant's here this evening, and I'm sure he can answer any questions you may have of him, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
questions from the commission?
I have a question. With the new building, will additional parking be required?
No, because it's not, he's not increasing the number of lifts or repair bays, he's just enclosing 2 existing lifts.
So the fact that it's a building doesn't equate to additional parking?
No. He's not included, he hasn't increased the traffic.
Are the lifts now in compliance with zoning?
The lifts, I believe, are in the back of the building, are they not, Doug? Yeah. This business has been there for 10 years now, and in 2006, the town adopted the UDO, which changed some of the zoning districts and some of the uses by right or permitted uses and conditional uses in commercial heavy and commercial light. Where this use was previously allowed in whatever the prior zoning district was, it's not anymore in the commercial light. It requires a commercial heavy zoning. And we'll go back here. Whoops. The rest of these properties are zoned commercial heavy. This one was just rezoned recently. And there are a number of auto repair shops in that area.
So really, his business isn't changing much?
No.
It's just putting a building over his equipment?
Correct. He's just enclosing 2 lifts.
Any other questions? Would the applicant like to step to the podium?
Gotta get dressed. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I don't think so, but I want to emphasize that there is no increase in business to speak of. We're just making it more functional throughout the different seasons of the year.
Okay,
That's the reason.
all right. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question for Ruth. It seems to me that there's quite a bit of parking there now.
There is.
So he's actually probably over the parking that he needs at this point, and adding the building really isn't putting him over his parking space
Correct.
limit. Okay, thank you.
All right. This is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. If there's no further discussion, Chair will entertain a motion.
Recommend approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval to City Council. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. This will go to City Council next for their final approval. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is rezone of approximately 16.81 acres from agricultural residential 5-acre minimum, AR5, to commercial light planned area development, CLPAD, and multiple family residential planned area development, CLPAD. Before we start, I just want, for the benefit of the audience, to let you know how this is going to happen. First, the staff is going to give us a staff report. The commission will ask questions of the staff. After the staff has completed their report, we'll allow the applicant to come up, either make a presentation or speak to us, at which point we'll ask questions of the applicant. After we do that, I will open a public hearing. When I open the public hearing, if you want to speak, you need to step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. It's not a huge crowd, so I'll give some latitude as to how long people speak. Please direct your questions to the commission, not to the applicant and not to the staff. If you have questions, we'll certainly take note of that, and after we close the public hearing, the commission will decide which questions we present to the applicant and to the staff. Please be clear and concise, and also be respectful of each other. If we can keep it quiet so that the commission can hear what people are saying, we would greatly appreciate that. After we close the public hearing, there'll be no more public comments. At that point, the commission will have discussion amongst themselves and make a recommendation to City Council. So with that, we'll have Ruth start the staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you, you have an application from the La Vacara Trust, Joe Cordovana trustee. This request is to rezone approximately 16.81 acres from AR5, its existing zoning, to CL Commercial Light PAD, Planned Area Development, and Multifamily Residential Planned Area Development. This is the subject parcel that we're talking about here. Prior to the meeting, of course, we notified all residents within 300 feet of the boundary. This is the map from the county showing the boundary and those landowners that were notified. Rather than go through the whole recital of the 10-page staff brief, I wanted to just kind of summarize what has gone on. This entire process started back in 2003 when Mr. Cordovana approached the town to start developing his property. He asked for a conditional use permit for a privately owned and operated park and recreation facility, which is what was granted in Ordinance 561. After that, he started construction on the windmill house in 2005 and then completed construction, and the building was finalized in 2006. The next interaction with Mr. Cordovana was in 2006, later in the year, when he came in with a technical review for a project called JC Estates, which encompassed approximately 80 acres. About the same time, contemporaneously with the tech review for the first iteration of the JC Estates, the town had updated the UDO and adopted a new Unified Development Ordinance, which set forth some new standards, including dedication of right-of-way. So this is where it's kind of gotten off the rails, and we are going to try and bring it back on tonight. So the adoption of the UDO in October of 2006 now requires a dedication of right-of-way. In October of 2008, Mr. Cordovana came back with the JC Ranch Retirement Living Center, which had expanded to 170 acres and included a skilled nursing facility, doctor's offices, and some living spaces for people who wanted to buy or rent homes. I'm sorry, I can't see this. The glare is hitting it. The Planning and Zoning Commission in April of 2009 recommended approval of Ordinance 9-719, which rezoned the property, and Resolution 09899, which approved a minor general plan amendment so that Mr. Cordovana could rezone his property from AR5 to planned area development, including commercial light, multifamily residential, single-family residential, and open space. In June of that same year, the Town Council approved the resolution and the ordinance so that the zoning and the general plan amendment could be made, with the stipulation that a final development plan had to be approved within 2 years and the right-of-way had to be dedicated. The applicant came back in 2011 to do a minor general plan amendment for just the windmill house, and between the time that he came back with the downsize project for just the windmill house, the town staff sent out a notice of noncompliance because the final development plan had not yet been submitted and no right-of-way dedication had taken place. The Planning and Zoning considered the minor general plan amendment for just the windmill house in September of 2011 and considered a number of items that evening. The first was ordinance number 11-001, which was denied, a zoning map change for which the commission declined to hear, and a conditional use permit 11-002, which was recommended for approval. Those items all went to town council in The town council approved 11752, which reverted the zoning back to AR5. 11753 rezoned the 20 acres, was denied. 11754, the conditional use permit was granted for 15 years, predicated on dedication of right-of-way. And 968, I'm sorry, was to reverse the minor general plan amendment, which was also approved. At that point, the conditional use permit would have been in effect for 15 years, conditioned upon Mr. Cordovana granting the right-of-way in front of his property. At some point in 2011, 2012, mid-2012, there was a change of operator for the Windmill House property to run the restaurant. At that point, staff realized that the right-of-way had never been provided by Mr. Cordovana. There had been no dedication of the right-of-way as required. Despite meetings with Mr. Cordovana, he declined to dedicate the right-of-way and left staff no option but to forward an ordinance to revoke the conditional use permit approved with 11-002, which Planning and Zoning made that recommendation in 9/4 of 2012, and then Town Council approved that shortly thereafter in September of 2012. The applicant came back to the town in February of 2014 with a new application for just the Windmill House, comprising initially 10 acres and then came back with 16 acres to encompass the lake, and requested initially commercial light, planned area development zoning, and then added later multifamily residential planned area development on the Windmill House parcel now that is 16.81 acres. After notification, a neighborhood meeting was held on August 7th, 2014, at which public comment was taken. The applicant has amended his application to accommodate some of the requests that were made at that meeting. He had a list of 17 uses. The applicant has come back and reduced that to 9 uses. Those uses are restaurants, cafes, and coffee shops, business and professional offices, banks, and similar, business, trade, dancing, art, music, and other educational facilities, indoor and outdoor sales of nursery stock, public utility buildings, structures or appurtenances thereto for public service use, indoor theaters, assembly halls, the casitas to be used in conjunction with weddings. Commercial greenhouses may be permitted with a minimum of 10 contiguous acres and in compliance with Section 4.30 Commercial Greenhouse Development Standards. Multifamily residential planned area development in accordance with the Unified Development Ordinance, Section 3.13, multifamily residential, and limited to the 6.55 acre parcel identified on the development plan. So this is the site map that he has submitted with this application. It's kind of hard to read, but there is the 6.55 acres for the multiple family housing would be this portion in the front that is not currently being used. This is the existing Windmill House, the casita, and then the Western Town facilities. In 2003, when this conditional use when the first conditional use permit was issued, it allowed Mr. Cordovana to construct this facility as a privately owned park and recreation facility in the AR5 zoning district. While the proposed use at the time did include some potential park-like or recreational features, the nature of this business was largely the food services made available to the general public by the Windmill House. This facility was also intended to serve as a clubhouse, providing a common area for activities in which residents of the proposed residential component could partake. When it became evident that the residential component would not materialize in the short term, the use of the facility for food service to the general public increased. Construction of the Western Town further expanded the services offered to the general public. The Unified Development Ordinance sets forth the zones that provide for the grouping of compatible uses or related land uses and applies regulations to properties located within each zoning classification or district. The UDO regulates setbacks, building heights, lot sizes, and specific uses, rather than broad classifications such as high-density residential or commercial. The general plan, on the other hand, sets forth the broad land use districts and designations that describe a wide category of uses such as commercial, industrial, single-family, medium-density residential, high-density residential. It doesn't specify things like lot size or does it include development standards. This is an important distinction because when we look at the future land use map for the town, it intermingles the two. There are designations on the future land use map, which is supposed to reflect the general plan, that are actually zoning districts or specific uses. So when this was, the initial CUP was issued in 2003, the conditional use, which was the privately owned park or recreation facility, was a conditional use in all residential districts at that time. So regardless of whether it had been multifamily or a mobile home park or any of those things, this use was allowed in that zoning district and in that general plan classification, land use classification. Based on this set of circumstances, the applicant invested a significant amount of money in developing the Windmill House. The subsequent expansion of uses to include a casita in Western Town are in keeping with the recreational uses originally contemplated with the initial CUP as part of a larger development, as well as subsequent rezoning and general plan amendments. The cycle of conditional use permits, failure to abide by conditions of zoning or use permits, and reversion of land use designations in zoning districts that have transpired over the past 10 years with the Lava Cara Trust need to be resolved with finality for the welfare of the applicant, the neighbors, and the community at large. As I said earlier, Mr. Cordovana, in his capacity as trustee for the Lava Cara Trust, submitted his own change application in February. We've expanded it to include both the commercial light and the multifamily residential. This is an ideal manner in which we can regulate the development and manner and placement of uses, in this case for a number of reasons. First, it allows for us to modify the number and type of underlying uses, and the staff can specifically disallow those uses most objectionable to the surrounding neighborhood. No bowling alleys, no bars, none of those things. The applicant has limited his request to now 9 uses, down from the 18 or the 17 that he had previously requested. Section 3.13 of the UDO sets forth the regulations governing the manner and placement of multiple family residential dwelling units in the town of Chino Valley. There are 3 permitted uses in this district: multifamily dwellings, customary accessory buildings, which would include things like garages, and churches or similar places of worship. Conditional uses allowed with a conditional use permit are as follows: privately owned and operated parks and recreation areas and centers, group homes, nursing and convalescent homes, temporary home and land sales offices, public utility buildings, schools, and residential facilities for the developmentally disabled. The corresponding development standard requires a 50-foot setback from the property boundary across the front. Upon dedication of the right-of-way, we would be looking at a 75-foot from the existing property boundary and approximately 100 feet from the center line of the road. However, on consideration of a final development plan, staff can recommend, Planning and Zoning Commission can recommend, and Town Council can recommend increased setbacks to further mitigate any impacts that such a development may have on the surrounding community. The required side and rear yard setbacks are a minimum of 20 feet and 10 feet respectively, so it would be 10 feet for side yards, 20 for rear yard setbacks, and the maximum lot coverage under roof is 40%. When applied to the subject parcel, the maximum allowed square footage under roof would be 114,127 square feet. Because the UDO requires a minimum of 3,000 square feet of raw land area per dwelling unit, a maximum of 95 units can potentially be developed. Now, those 95 units would have to fit into the 114,000 square feet. He can do that in 3 stories as long as they don't exceed the maximum building height. He can do that in larger units and not get the 95, but the maximum number of units he can get is 95, and the maximum square footage under roof is the 114,000 square feet. The UDO further requires 1.5 parking stalls per 1-bedroom apartment. Assuming the maximum of the 95 1-bedroom apartments, the required number of parking stalls, which would be 143, which would require an additional 25,700 square feet of area to accommodate the required parking. Section 4.22, off-street parking and loading, requires a minimum of a 3-foot landscape berm or wall to screen parking areas from the public view. So depending upon where they would go, those parking areas, if they were between the future structure that could be located here and parking was here, he would be required to develop at least a 3-foot berm across the front. Again, these are all things that, upon the recommendation of staff, the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council can require that those requirements be increased. These are just the minimum standards. Resolution of this matter by approving the zone change request will meet the needs of both the applicant and the community in several ways. First, it grants permanent zoning to this property and establishes the use of the windmill house as a use by right on the property rather than allowing operation of the windmill house by conditional use permit. Similar to the previously issued conditional use permits, the permitted uses can be further conditioned, which later on we will talk about the additional conditions staff recommends, to mitigate impact on surrounding areas. In addition, adherence to all requirements of the UDO and town codes would still apply. If the applicant fails to meet the conditions of the rezoning or comply with town code, his business license would not be issued or once issued revoked, and he would have to cease operations yet again. Second, it requires filing of a development plan that outlines current and future uses. The development plan must be reviewed by staff to ensure it is in compliance with underlying zoning, engineering requirements, building requirements, and setbacks. Only when staff is satisfied that the plan meets the development standard and regulations will it be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their consideration and recommendation. Once the Planning and Zoning Commission makes a recommendation to Town Council, if Town Council approves it, the document is recorded with the county recorder, so it permanently affixes these uses and these layouts to the property. Review and approval of the development plan will be a requirement that must be completed before issuance of a business license, excuse me. Finally, a Town of Chino Valley business license would not be issued unless and until a dedication of right-of-way was made by the applicant, accepted by the Town Council, and recorded at the Yavapai County Recorder's Office. This is one of the long-standing issues that has plagued this project, is the right-of-way. If Mr. Cordovana chooses not to dedicate the right-of-way, once again, he does not get a business license and he cannot operate. The General Plan 2014 sets forth a new concept in land use planning for the town of Chino Valley, and they're called community cores. These are small clusters of development intended to offer mixed uses, pedestrian-friendly and pedestrian-oriented developments that are an alternative to the automobile-centric development pattern in Chino Valley today. This same concept can be applied to the subject property by using this planned area development overlay. A designated senior living core or senior living planned area development land use designation could offer such uses such as restaurants, recreational facilities, medical services, enrichment classes, and other activities that specifically serve an aging population and are within walking distance of the proposed multiple family residential use in surrounding neighborhood. Staff proposes initiating a minor general plan amendment upon the ratification of the General Plan 2014 that would allow for a senior living core, or alternatively, a mixed-use neighborhood core that would provide neighborhood service-related uses at the subject site. Should the general plan not be approved, the applicant would be required to complete the minor general plan process in compliance with the existing general plan. Staff finds that these actions can resolve the longstanding conflict between the Lavacara Trust, surrounding property owners, and the town, and provide a means by which the Windmill House can be reopened, providing the public with an additional activity and entertainment facility in town. The addition of multifamily housing will expand the availability and broaden the variety of housing choices in the town. Section 1.9.4.1, Planned Area Development Overlay District purpose sets forth the following as the purpose of a PAD overlay district. Provide for the orderly development of land consistent with the Unified Development Ordinance of the Town of Chino Valley and permit flexibility in the design of residential, commercial, and/or industrial developments in conformance with the intent and purpose of the General Plan and Unified Development Ordinance. As presented, staff finds that the proposed rezoning meets this purpose as follows. Number one, a development plan. The development plan required as a result of the PAD overlay will provide staff with the tools necessary to mitigate impacts the proposed project may have on the neighborhood, including modification of required setbacks and separation distances, landscaping, lighting, and so forth. The proposed zoning use meets the intent of the UDO as it provides for the social, physical, and economic advantages recommended resulting from comprehensive and orderly planned use of land resources. Finally, it provides an opportunity to develop a mixed-use district in a concentrated area that is within walking distance of the neighborhoods and populations it serves. Secondly, the purpose of the planned area develop requires or provides that the modifying of the underlying zoning district regulations to permit flexibility and innovation in developmental design and provide opportunities for unique or mixed-use developments. Staff finds that this application meets this objective as follows. Number one, it reduces the number and manner of allowed uses in the commercial light zoning district, provides additional housing opportunities, and provides an opportunity to develop a neighborhood services core that is within walking distance of the community it serves. Finally, promote economic construction and maintenance of streets and utilities without compromising public safety and welfare. Staff finds that the proposed rezoning meets this objective as follows. A dedication of right-of-way will allow for future expansion of roads should the traffic generated by the proposed uses interfere with the flow of traffic on West Road 4 North. The location utilizes existing arterial streets to carry traffic rather than require construction of new lane miles for perpetual maintenance by the town. Any required infrastructure improvements are the full responsibility of the applicant to construct to town standard and dedicate for perpetual maintenance. Preserve and utilize open space and offer recreational opportunities close to residential uses. Staff finds that the proposed rezoning meets this purpose as follows. Among the applicant's proposed uses for the Windmill House are offering recreational classes such as yoga for the public, meeting space for service clubs, and movie nights for families. The lakes and surrounding area offer privately maintained park-like setting. The enrichment classes would benefit the community without expenditure of taxpayer dollars to support them. The potential development of a multiple family housing unit provides a mixed-use development in a contained area that does not rely on taxpayer-funded recreational amenities, but rather can take advantage of the privately constructed ones developed by Mr. Cordovana. Staff also recommends, I'm way ahead of myself here, conditions of approval. Staff recommends conditioning the planned area development as follows. The development plan shall be in substantial conformance with all applicable town codes, building codes, engineering requirements, unless otherwise modified herein. The property owner agrees that the approval of this action confers no additional entitlements or rights to the owner or applicant other than those that are specifically vested herein. All structures open to the public or in close proximity to the public or common areas shall be inspected by the building official or his/her designee and conform to currently adopted Town of Chino Valley building codes. No business license shall be issued until said inspections have been performed and all deficiencies corrected. Any future additions or expansions of existing structures shall require amendment of the development plan. Construction of multifamily housing may require extension of municipal sewer and water service from its closest termination point to the site, depending upon the number of dwelling units, and will require submitted of an amended development plan. Prior to the issuance of any business license or building permit, Lavacara Trust will dedicate and convey right-of-way in compliance with the standards set forth in Section 4.23 and 4.28 of the Unified Development Ordinance for the full frontage of West Road 4 North. No later than November 10th, 2014, Lavacara Trust will initiate a minor general plan amendment to address the underlying land use designation in full compliance with the general plan in effect at the time of application. Any amplified music or other noises associated with the uses subject to this PAD shall not exceed 60 decibels at the property boundary. Again, uses are limited to the following: restaurants, cafes, and coffee shops, dancing, art, music, and other educational facilities, indoor and outdoor sales of nursery stock, public utility buildings, structures or appurtenances thereto, indoor theaters and assembly halls, commercial greenhouses with a minimum of 10 contiguous acres, catering services, casita in conjunction with the weddings, multiple family residential in accordance with the UDO 3.13, multiple family residential and limited to the 6.55 acres on the parcel identified in the development plan. Again, we are talking about this part. I don't have enough room. This is the proposed boundary, and the any multifamily residential would be developed here. Weddings and other private events shall end no later than 12 o'clock a.m., midnight. Buffet and restaurant service shall end no later than 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday night. Pumpkin Festival, it will be an allowed use. Western town activities, subject to final inspection and approval of all structures by building official or his/her designee, prior to the initiation of public activities and family movie nights. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Oh, real quickly, let me go through the next steps. And I think that's the last one, yep. Okay, so what happens next? Tonight is the 9/16/14 public hearing at the Planning and Zoning Commission. The commission will make a recommendation to Town Council. Town Council will then make a decision on either October 14th or October 23rd. They will either approve or deny the rezoning request. If it's denied, no further action will be taken. If it's approved, the next steps will be to sign and record the right-of-way, file a minor general plan amendment, finalize all structures with the building department, and submit a final development plan. Once the development plan is submitted, staff will review and approve the development plan. It goes through engineering, zoning, Chino Valley Fire Department, and several other entities, ADOT. Planning and zoning will review, comment, and make recommendations on the plan. This portion between planning and zoning and the staff can go back and forth as many times as it takes to get to a plan everyone can agree on. And then P&Z makes a recommendation to Town Council. If Town Council decides to approve the development plan, that document is then recorded so that it is memorialized for use either by Mr. Cordovana or any heirs, successors, or assigns. And with that, I will answer any questions you may have.
Let's start with, on June 9th of 2009, the council approved the minor general plan. Later in 2011, when Mr. Cordovana's conditional use was revoked, there's nothing said that the general plan then reverted back.
That's the 11968, reverse minor general plan amendment. That's resolution 11968. That's when that was reversed.
The general plan was also
Correct.
reversed.
Yep.
And that's where it stands at the moment?
Correct. Right now, the underlying land use designation is medium-density residential, and the zoning is AR5, agricultural residential, 5-acre minimum.
Okay. When the letters were sent out, what was the radius that the letters are sent out?
300 feet.
300 feet. How many residents or property owners, or how many letters are sent out?
The applicant
were
sent the
out?
letters. Do you remember how many? 7.
So only 7 are directly affected as far as
It's the
we're
statute.
required to send out
Right.
letters to 300-foot.
Correct. That's the
radius.
statutory minimum.
So they're the ones that are immediately affected
Correct.
by this. 7. Okay.
Anyone else?
I just have a question. In the attorney's letter, he states that the Windmill House will continue to offer weddings, event planning services, the Pumpkin Festival, and other festivals. So I just want to be clear that in the recommendation to council, the only festival is the Pumpkin Festival. There are no other festivals.
Right now, that's the only recommendation is the Pumpkin Festival.
And the list of uses here is binding. There's no latitude within, I'm just asking if other parks and recreation type activities want to go on there, would those have to be approved by staff or?
Such as?
I don't know. That's the joy of it. We don't know, do we? So my question stands.
Sure.
If Mr. Cordovana starts some other activity here that is not on this list, and someone in this audience says that's not on this list,
Then he
they
has
would
to
come
stop
to
that.
they would come to the town, and that would.
Yep, he
So
would ha-
Mr. Cordovana has agreed
Yes.
that
This-
these items on this list, these are the items that he will do on this property. Is that what I'm understanding?
This is the list generated by Mr. Cordovana and his council.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have some questions. The 25-foot dedication of right-of-way, is that going to be adequate for the future use of Road 4 North?
That's been determined, yes, by the town engineer that that's adequate.
Okay. What if there is a traffic impact study when the development occurs and it says you need more right-of-way?
I mean, which development?
The multifamily development that we're looking at.
Yes. Yes, we can certainly require TIA, and they will have to build more roadway if it is required.
And what if there's not adequate right-of-way after we've gotten the 25 feet?
Well, I think that the town engineer has designed that road, and it wants the 25 feet so that we have 2 lanes in each direction. And that is what he has determined is adequate right-of-way.
Okay, 25 feet from the center line is 50 total. And you're
Correct.
saying 2 lanes of traffic each way.
That's the ultimate build-out for that road.
So we're looking at what? 10-foot lanes, 12-foot lanes with no shoulders?
12-foot at least.
12-foot lanes, that's 48 feet. So you've got a 1-foot shoulder and no clear zone if you have to get off the road for an accident.
This is the engineering standard.
I think you better look at the standard.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it said 100 feet from the center of
It's
the
100
road?
feet from the center line. By the time, the setback of the
For the road right away is
Multi-
100 feet from the center of the
No,
road.
no, the building setback.
the building setback is
Okay.
100
You-
feet from the center
You have a
line.
right-of-way, and then you have a front yard setback. But if you think you're gonna get 4 lanes of traffic in 50 feet, yeah,
No,
you can do it.
it's 50 feet each side.
That wasn't clear, because I asked about 50 feet. If you're gonna have a 100-foot right-of-way, yeah, you can get 4 lanes in there. I think you covered this, but it wasn't clear in the application, but it says extension of multiple municipality sewer and water service from the closest termination point to the site. That will be, the cost of that will be borne by the developer,
Correct.
and looking at that site plan that you had up, yeah, and the survey line, which is that light lime green one with all the dots on it,
That would be this
it
one.
appears that they're going to have to move their access gate. Because that survey line goes right through that access gate. And if this gets developed, they will have to make sure that the access gate spacing is adequate so that the parcel adjacent to them that does not have a lot of frontage that there's adequate spacing for the traffic on the road so that that lot can be accessed. But like I said, looking at that site plan, that access gate with this new survey is going to have to be moved.
This is a preliminary plan. This is for illustrative purposes only to show you where the 6.5 acres are, where the
Okay.
existing buildings are. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that that will be
Yeah,
corrected if necessary.
Yeah, well, if what they show here is what gets developed, that access gate is right on a survey line, and I think the applicant owns both parcels, but they are separate parcels. I guess the question I have for staff is, looking at the potential land use and future land use, you're asking for a rezoning to a, I guess, a commercial zoning, and it's 3/4 of a mile from the nearest commercial. It's right in the center of a residential area. I mean, I should say, I should qualify, it looks like it's in the center of an area that is zoned residential, and it's 3/4 of a mile from the nearest commercial, so that kind of looks like a spot zoning. And
Well, unfortunately, this is the situation that we are in. The conditional use, the zoning for the planned area development for the commercial light, the multifamily, single-family residential, and open space have all been previously granted. And this is the mess that we are in, and we need to fix it.
Okay, but they were all granted as conditional use.
No. The planned area development was not conditionally granted.
So all these buildings that we're looking at, the greenhouse, the windmill house, they were all permitted under commercial when it was in residential?
The windmill house was permitted as a conditional use
Okay.
under the AR5 zoning in 2003 as a
Right.
private park or recreation facility.
Right. And the applicant didn't meet the conditional use requirements.
Not at that time. He came back with he came back with a larger project on 2 separate occasions and requested zoning and minor general plan amendments that were granted for a planned area development, including commercial light, single-family residential, multifamily residential, and open space, which had been granted by town council.
What caused the problem is failure to receive the right-of-way.
Right away, and the market tanked, and there was just no demand for the residential housing component. This isn't the only one that has had this problem.
Does it meet, it seems like this thing has met some sort of zoning requirements all the way through, and the land use, the property, the stuff that was put on the property all fit within the general plan land use, am I correct there?
Yes. This is what the general plan was twice amended to allow for this.
And the general plan that we've got coming up would also allow this?
Yes, with again, another minor general plan amendment.
Okay, another question. On item 9, where it has uses are limited to the following. Oh, I'm sorry, not item 9, item 8, where it says, any amplified music or other noise associated with the use, subject to this CUP.
Correct, that's a typographical area, it should be PAD.
Fine. Shall not exceed 60 decibel at the property boundary. 2 points. One, can we set a time limit on the noise?
We did.
Well, you said it for weddings at 12, buffet and restaurant at 8. I would just like to see, maybe put down midnight so it covers both. But more important than that, and I'm not going to put our police officers on the spot, how will the decibel level be enforced?
They have a decibel meter. They have gone out and done those measurements before.
Okay,
And 60 decibels is about the average, the loudness of the average conversation.
yeah, I know, I've used the equipment myself, it's just, so we have that type of equipment
Yes.
in the town?
Yep.
Because if we're gonna put that requirement on, we have to have somehow to enforce it. And that's all I wanted to be clear on.
The 6.5 acres that has some ability to be developed is actually the furthest point away on this property from any of the existing residences, am I correct there?
Yes. It abuts the
No.
Cordovana.
It's right up front.
It's up front, but it is the furthest
Yeah,
from.
I meant to say sideways. I know it's up against the road frontage.
Here's
but
the road
side to
frontage.
side.
This is the Cordovana residence. These three are occupied residences. The 6.5 acres would be approximately here.
So there's quite a bit of bare land around all of that now, with the possibility of the parcel across the street becoming homes or whatever.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to move this along then with the applicant. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Mark Saveda. I represent Livacara Trust. First, I would like to thank Ruth Mayday and her staff for putting all the work into this project, moving it forward, and making an excellent presentation to the commission tonight. We appreciate all your work. Thank you. You're familiar with our request. We're seeking to have PAD zoning on the 16.18 acres. I'm not going to go through that again. I think it's made pretty clear in terms of what the applicant would like to do. If all of you have been to the property, it's an absolutely beautiful property. It's really the jewel of Chino Valley, and it's a shame that it's not open and being available to the public. When it was open, it was an economic boom to the town. At its peak, it was employing 25 persons. It was generating revenue for the town. There were weddings here on a frequent basis. There were people that were traveling from Prescott here to Chino Valley to have their weddings here. That served to benefit all of the businesses here in Chino Valley as a result of that economic stimulus that was brought by these people. Unfortunately, that's not happening right now because of the fact that the property's been closed for such a period of time. So we would like to get the Windmill House reopened so this economic magnet can serve to benefit the community again. It would also serve to benefit the members of the community, as Ms. Mayday indicated, to offer yoga classes, after-school activities, and community service activities. People could use the facility for their benefit and their enjoyment. I'd also point out that the property is located with residences around it, and it would make it easy for people to walk to the facility. So, I mean, there is that benefit to it as well. We did have our neighborhood meeting, and as Ms. Mayday indicated, we did scale back the scope of the uses that we proposed with respect to the property. We've set forth the 9 uses that we would agree would be appropriate for the use of the property. We've agreed that any events with amplification would be limited to indoor use. There would be no loud or excessive noise for any of the uses at the property in accordance with Town Code Section 31.02. With respect to the 6.55 acres closest to Road 4 North, we've indicated that would more likely than not be developed as multifamily use. So additionally, we have submitted to the Planning Department 666 signatures of community members here in Chino Valley that support the project. So there is significant support for getting the windmill house reopened and allowing this, the property to be developed. And it certainly, this would make an ideal facility for the community core concept that Ms. Mayday discussed tonight. So we would respectfully request that you would approve the rezoning request. Thank you.
Anybody have a question for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, we're going to open the public hearing. As I stated,
I'm sorry, I did have a question.
okay. Sorry, there is a question. Could you come back to the podium?
I was looking over this stack of paper, and if this goes forward to council and gets approved, is there a time frame for the development? Because how I'm looking at it is that, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that if this goes forward and if it gets approved, the existing buildings on the site could be inspected by Development Service or their representative and permitted and start operating again because they're existing. And then the question would be, how long before we see the multifamily dwellings being built?
Well, that's going to depend on a number of factors, including the ability to obtain financing. One of the problems that occurred in 2009 through that 2011 timeframe was that when it was approved in 2009, we anticipated obtaining financing, but because of the economic circumstances at the time, they weren't able to get the financing. The circumstances have changed in the financial arena substantially since then, but that'll be one of the issues to be considered. There's no specific time frame, but I believe that we'll be working with the Planning Department in terms of setting forth a schedule in terms of when the development plan would need to be submitted.
Okay, but am I correct in saying that if it goes forward from the commission to the council, that the existing buildings could be inspected and permitted and operating?
Subject to obtaining approval, the necessary approvals, I believe that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to, because then in reality, the multifamily dwelling, and don't get me wrong, I fully anticipate you want to develop it. You wouldn't be putting this plan together if you didn't want to develop it. But the existing buildings, like the windmill house and the greenhouse, could be up and running again and people hired to work there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Right, thank you.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
How long has Mr. Cordovana owned that property?
Well, it's been owned by the trust. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly since 2002.
All right, 2002.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to open the public hearing now. Please step to the podium. Sir, if you'd like to come first, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Lee Paul. I live on Harrison Drive, 2845. I am the fifth house from Road 4, Road 4 North. I didn't receive a letter, but I'm in the community, very close. I have several concerns. Time is limited, so I'm not going to go through everything. However, one of my major concerns is water. Mr. Cordovana owns the water company that supplies our subdivision. We had a storm recently, electricity went off, and our water pressure went down. He fills the lake, our water pressure goes down. He has received, orders or permission or something from the Corporation Commission, I'm not too sure on this, who he gets the orders from, but to put in a tank to facilitate fire control, and a couple of pumps to keep the pressure up in case electricity goes off. Now that has been in, the request for that is, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. Nothing has been done. We're concerned about water. We live in an area that we should be concerned about water. Where's all the water going to come from for this development? He supplies the water now to Appaloosa 1 and Appaloosa 2. And we have a water problem now. My other concern is the congestion. We live in a community, it's peaceful, it's dark at night, we have very little congestion, and it appears to me that we're putting an island of commercial property right smack in the center of a nice residential area where we all move because we like the surroundings. I don't mind the restaurant. As a matter of fact, when the restaurant was open, I went there and I enjoyed it. And it's not, to me, it's not objectionable. But to put commercial property, commercial buildings on that piece of property will be totally out of context with the rest of the property around it, which is all residential. I wonder about the fire department. I wonder about the increase in road traffic. And we have a problem with our roads now. We don't have enough money to keep our roads up. However, we have to live with what we've got, and we're willing to do that. But I just fear for the possibility of putting an island of commercial property right in the middle of a wonderful residential area that we enjoy now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Mr. Marlin, would you like to come up?
Evening, Commissioner Rowitz, Commissioners. Actually, I should say Chairwoman Rowitz.
Thank you, sir.
My name's Robert McCauley. I live at 1527 West Road 4 North. That house, it's not showing up. But if you look at all the blue there, the three that are in line along the property line, I'm right directly across the street. And I thank Ruth on the timeline. It was very good. There was information there that I hadn't had, but she missed one. Last year, we had, before the commission here, a MPH4 rezone request from the Cordovana Trust. And at that time, if I can find the paper I got here, I'll read to you what David Hoffman said. Wrong one. There we go. David Hoffman said at that time, and this is in the minutes of the P&Z Commission meeting of 7/16/2013. Ms. Hoffman commented that this property is in medium density designation, and this request does not meet that criteria. But the general plan also talks about the intensity of uses, which can include traffic generation, noise levels, compatibility of uses, density, access, size, bulk, and scale of buildings, parking and outdoor lighting, and time of use. The general plan also has goals and policies, and the first of the land use element is to preserve the stability and diversity of the town's existing neighborhoods, while allowing for increased density for infill purposes. Policy 1.3 states that to ensure that densities that are requested are in conformance with the future land use map designation. Policy 1.4 is to ensure that the type and intensity of land use shall be consistent with that of the immediate neighborhood. This is not. This was the position of staff last year against the MPH4. The P&Z voted it down, council voted it down. Mr. Cordovana had a nice operation there with the windmill house. Nobody has an argument with the windmill house under CUP. But Mr. Cordovana refused the right-of-way. So now he comes back and says, well, I'll give you the right-of-way if you give me commercial light. Why not just give him the CUP back again? And let him open the windmill house. If you're concerned about the jobs, and that's the big buzzword today, is jobs, then give the CUP. Now, not too long ago, this year in June, we passed an ordinance on this P&Z, and I say we because I was on the commission at that time. And it was a PAD ordinance. And the ordinance number is 14-786 at 1.9.4.3, and I brought you a copy of the packet that I have there. Section F states, the Planning Commission shall recommend approval only after making the following findings: that the rezoning as proposed or modified is consistent with and conforms to the general plan, and that all properties within the proposed PAD overlay district will have adequate access to public or private streets appropriate to their use. This proposal, because the next 3 pages you've got there, shows, and Ms. Mayday presented it also, that the zoning there, and these are from the general plan. The first page was the original general plan in 2003. It was AR5. Okay? Amended general plan, and it doesn't have a date on it, shows medium density residential for this property. The general plan that we are going to be voting on in November shows this property, that's page 3 if I can get it open, as residential. Yes, I was on the general plan committee also. We did a thing on cores. The cores were designed for along Highway 89, not out here in the residential neighborhoods. Now, the problem we have is that there's been multiple promises of things to happen on that property, and almost every one of them have not happened. They can use the excuse, well, the downturn of 2006. You go over here, you got 3 other subdivisions in town where downturns at the same time. All the infrastructure for their planned developments are in place. Molly Ray has streets, sidewalks, a future sewer and water. Bright Star has everything. You go over to Highlands Ranch, it's got everything. You go over where the Vacara Trust is, nothing, except for the windmill house. PADs give him an excuse to do something authorized by the commission, by the town council, but not necessary to follow through on. Before he could have built that windmill house on a PAD, he had to have the infrastructure in. I'm getting a little bit feisty right now, and I apologize to the commission. You guys don't deserve it. Maybe there are others that do deserve it. This proposal, in my mind, is brought to you specifically to get La Vacara Trust off of staff's back. And with that, thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I'll let you ask me.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes, please come up.
Good evening. My name is Ronald Maines, and I reside in Chino Valley, right next door to those folks. And man across from that man right there. Real close neighbor to the windmill.
But not 300 feet.
Pardon?
Go ahead, Mr. Maines. Go ahead.
I thought that I don't speak real loud sometimes. Well, here we are again with another request for a rezone by Mr. Cordovano. In conversation with some of those involved in this process, I was led to believe that this might be the request that would be reasonable. I certainly agree with the staff's assertion that it would be a good thing to finally find common ground and make this the last time we do this. This has been going on way too long. At the neighborhood meeting, we asked Mr. Cordovano, what does Mr. Cordovano want to do? They were asked several times in different ways, and the answer was always just reopen the windmill. That in turn led to the question of why are you requesting a commercial light PAD? And the question was never definitively answered. Several people suggested, as Mr. McCullough just did, that a CUP would serve the purpose for operating the windmill. We received in response, thank you for your input, and we were told they would make a list of permitted uses as they appear in the UDO. I didn't take a head count, but I'd say there were 25 or 30 people at that meeting, and there were only 5 who were in favor. Joe, Mr. Savada, another man at the head table, and a couple in the audience. What you have in your packets is quite different from what was presented, and most importantly, there was no mention during that meeting of multifamily residential on 6.55 acres. We were misled, and the request in front of you isn't one that most of us can support. Of course, Mr. Cordovano can request anything he wants, but there is no obligation on your part to approve it just because he asks. Mr. Cordovano has made some bad decisions about his property over the years, and the town has made some bad decisions about Mr. Cordovano's property as well. Invariably, Cordovano and the town, come to us, Cordovano's neighbors, to approve a proposition that will be detrimental to our semi-rural lifestyle and our property values. This request is typical of the previous request, and it is an overreach. And that overreach is the multifamily residential in the 6.55 acres. Multifamily residential is high density by definition, and as such, it's not compatible at all with this medium density area. And make no mistake, Mr. Cordovano wants to have apartments on that 6.5 acres. He likes things he can own and rent. As to apartments in Chino Valley, Granite Creek, Antelope Valley, Lakeside are all on Highway 89 and the commercial corridor, not in some medium density residential area. In fact, if approval for this request would amount to spot zoning on the 6.55 acres. My research on spot zoning told me 2 things. Number one, there are a lot of case laws, I guess I should say, that address the spot zoning. And number 2, the courts do not like it, and they usually rule against it. Granted, the UDO does provide for a PAD overlay if it is in the right place, and the 6.55 acres is not the right place. And here's why. The UDO in Part 1.2 purpose, which the staff cited, but failed to state in part, says to avoid undue concentration of population. UDO also directs planners and zoners to consider the best interests of the citizens of the town. We, the neighbors, are citizens, and this request is not in our best interest. In the general plan, we find the following guidance. The community vision section says, in part, the town of Chino Valley is a forward-looking, diverse community which is true to its small town rural values and protects its quality of life. In the town values section, it says we foster neighbors, helping neighbors, and we seek to maintain our rural atmosphere and lifestyle. And most important is LU 1.4, which says, and Mr. McCulley stated it also, assure that the type and intensity of land shall be consistent with the immediate neighborhood. Shall in the legal sense means it is mandatory. To address the list of properties that the attorney submitted as evidence, the town has a history of changing zoning from residential to commercial light. I submit that these properties are in no way comparable to this one. It ranges all the way from former transmission on East Road 2 North, which is right behind Country West and the post office, across the street from the car wash and Safeway. It was, for all practical purposes, more or less commercial anyway. The one next door to it has no, it looks abandoned, but it is also commercial light. Three of them are actually commercial heavy, including Corey Mendoza's, which is across the street from Swan's. And he's next door to the oil company, and not intruding on anybody's residence. Commercial light makes perfect sense. It's on the highway. And so on. The two up at Rolling Hills are right on the highway. Commercial light. Nearest residential is a couple blocks, and so on. A very important difference in these properties is even that though they are now commercial, light, or heavy, they are for a single specific purpose, not to create a mini mall or build apartments. So in conclusion, it seems that once more Mr. Cordovano has missed a chance to ask for something we can support. I respectfully ask that you vote no to this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maines. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes.
I'm Gary Grindstaff, and my address is 1498 West Road 4 North, and I'm one of the 7 immediately affected people. I live, you don't have a pointer here or anything, do you? Where is it? Like a laser pointer?
No, you just got to kind of roll this.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. Yeah, got it. Okay. Yeah, I live right here, right there, in that 2.5 acres, myself and my dog. My neighbors behind me, Debbie and Augie, the two of them, they have a couple horses and some chickens. My neighbors around me, you know, a couple here, Ron, and then across the street, people, you know, couples, dogs, just a lot of acreage, you know, just that's the neighborhood. Just talking reality, I lived through the windmill house. When Dean Eccles ran the windmill house, they had stuff going on sometimes every night, it seemed like. Not sure that was quite legal, but the cars would come in, the gate right here, and this thing you talked about, the access gate and the survey line, well, this gate that they came through right here to come in, it's angled, so they come in, all their headlights, the cars would flash up. My bedrooms are on this side of the house, so all my bedrooms light up, and it wakes me up at night. There's a lot of noise and everything over there. I didn't know what would be going on at the windmill house, but I got a good taste of it, so I'm talking reality here. It was very irritating, you know, with the lights coming in, and in the morning when the garbage trucks come in to pick up the trash, you know, they turn in there and wake me up again too. But, you know, we all had a taste of that, so we know what that was like, and we didn't like it too much. A lot of people had problems with the noise and everything. But you know, when you put 95 apartments in here and you do the math, that's probably 4 people in an apartment. It was a 1-bedroom, maybe 2 people. Is it 200 people, 300 people living right here? You know, how many people? It seems very highly dense when you got 2 people here, 1 person here and 2 people here. Now you got maybe 300 or 400 squeezed in here. It just doesn't fit. It's like a square peg in a round hole. You know, really concerned about this multifamily housing. But I know that, you know, Joe needs to build that to get rental checks to come in, and he needs commercial light zoning to get the financing to build these rental properties, just like we saw a year ago with the mobile home trailer parks that he was going to put right along this fence line. I probably was going to have 5 of those and more along here. We tried to give him a way to work that out, put the parking down here that he had way up here. Of course, that never flew. We're always trying to help him, you know, but nothing ever works. You're really getting tired of coming in here. I've been doing this since it started. I've been living there 10 years. But that 95 units really concerns me. You know, there's plenty of things that could be done on this property right now, the way it is zoned. 5-acre residential, I'm sure it could be subplotted to 1-acre residential like Appaloosa Meadows. Of course, I don't think he wants to sell it. The agriculture thing, you know, don't laugh, but there's a national crisis, you know, with Colorado and Washington State can't get enough marijuana. You know, that's very true. Laugh and giggle, but there's fortunes to be made right here with the greenhouses and the cold frames that he's got. It's already agriculture. I mean, there's uses that can happen. There's things that can bring in lots of money, but we always seem to be locked in this high-density housing, and you know, which is not compatible with the neighborhood. We've had this meeting slide so many times. I was out of town for about a month, and I wrote a little letter to the planning and zoning with my concerns that I gave to one of the people here on the council. But I just want to give you, Gwen, a copy of this, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Braggs.
Yeah, you saw it. It's this one right here.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I guess
Yeah.
not.
No.
All right. Would anyone else like to speak? Thank you.
Wow. My name is Jay Bates. I live at 2290 Harrison Drive in Appaloosa Meadows. I'm the president of HOA2 in Appaloosa Meadows. A couple things that I was looking over with this. I had a conversation with Mr. Cordovana a couple weeks ago because all this was getting presented and people were talking about and saying things, and so I wanted to kind of try to the bottom of it. So I asked him quite specifically what the issue was with what he wanted to do. And he told me that he just wanted to open the windmill house and get it back up and running. Personally, I don't see any problem with that. It seems like a good fit over there. It seemed like it was good before, and I don't think a lot of the people out there had a problem with it. But then when everything comes to light, turns out that we're going to have bank buildings, commercial property, maybe a care facility, a 95-unit apartment complex. Man, I don't get it. And I just asked a point-blank question and didn't get an honest answer. And I'm sorry, that bothers me, especially when I live out there as well. You know, Chino Valley is a small community. Neighbors know each other. Everybody's friendly. We still live in the country and we like it. And I was brought to mind when I looked at the seal for the city of Chino Valley. That's what it shows. And that's why we're all here. If we want to live in commercial areas, we go move there. But it seems to me that, you know, this has been going on since 2003. And in every instance, the reason it didn't go through is because Mr. Cordovana didn't perform. It wasn't anything to do with the council or people granting him permission or anything else. He didn't perform. He wouldn't give the right-of-way. It says right in these documents that we were given tonight, he even tried to hold the council hostage, tell them that if you don't approve my thing, I'm not going to give you the right-of-way. So, I mean, that just doesn't sound kosher to me. You know, 5 denials, 5 out of compliances, a lot of approvals. I know a lot of support on this. The developer, I think, and maybe I'm wrong in other areas that I've lived, but usually the developer is required to to perform an impact statement before a zoning change, so that it shows the zoning commission and the council what the impact of this project's going to be. Okay, if you're going to build a 95-unit apartment complex, and you're going to build a bank, and you're going to build a care facility, what's the impact on the city for doing that? Right now, we don't have any of that information. So he's asking us to approve a zoning change so he can do all these things, and we don't even know what the impact is on our city. We don't have a lot of money. How are we going to do that once we get to that point? Lastly, Mr. Pasiek's comments about what was going to get built and how. Is the windmill house going to open right away? Are we going to build the 95-unit apartment complex first? And oh, well, guys, we couldn't build any of the rest of it, but I got all the apartments in. I don't know, but there's too many questions that aren't answered, that none of us know what's going on. And we all like our community where we live. It's 5 acres for a reason, because it is residential, and we all live out there. And I don't know where the 3/4 of a mile commercial unit is, but the closest thing I could see is the Rose's Bar or Lucy's Bar at the corner of Road 4 and 89, and that's a mile from the property.
And there's the commercial zoning area
Okay,
is about a half mile from Lucy's.
okay, yeah, because it was stated earlier 3/4 of a mile, but
Yeah,
it's,
I measured it roughly, it's 3/4 of a mile
yeah,
from the.
so it's a
zoning.
mile to the closest commercial establishment, I guess, what I was looking at. But again, it's easy when you look at this map, and fortunately for them, 300 miles in a 5-acre parcels, you don't have to notify very many people. But if you go out 1,000 feet or a little further, you're going to get 300 people. So I think that it's not a good thing. Hope it's denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is David Woodcock. I live at 1556 West Road 4.5 North, which is not on the 300-foot limit, but is in the northwest corner, right about there. Have lived there for 20-plus years. Native Arizonan, lived all my life in Yavapai County. So I know the area, like the rural lifestyle, like many people have talked about. Have been at too many of these planning and zoning meetings to discuss the proposals that have been presented for this particular property. And they vary from the entire piece of property being developed to now down to a size of a relatively small development. And I'm again surprised that we're looking at a multifamily proposal. This is not compatible with the neighborhood. It does not enhance the neighborhood. Those of us that live in this type of area want to keep it rural. Having been at that particular address for 20-plus years, I can tell you that during the windmill operation, there were many instances of lots of noises at night. One party, there was a cannon going off. Loud music. I live almost half a mile from the windmill house. And I could hear the singers, not only could I hear them, but I could understand what they were saying. That's pretty loud. And I'm afraid that that's going to happen again, because what we found when we reported those instances was the city was unprepared, the town was unprepared to enforce any kind of restriction on that property. How are you going to enforce your sound codes now? Yes, you might have an officer go out there with a decibel meter. What are you going to do? Are you going to shut them down? I doubt very seriously that that's exactly what would happen. You also have to consider that a lot of times the noises were they would cycle, loud, quiet, loud, quiet. Time the officer comes out to the property, the noise has gone away, he goes away, noise goes back up. So I have concerns about enforcement. I would also like to say that things like the Pumpkin Festival when there were festivals held there before, they would use the access road that's on 4.5 North and would allow vehicles to come in the back door, basically, to provide additional parking for those festivals. Now, as I recall, the Pumpkin Festival is very popular, lots of people there. Where is there going to be parking for those people in this particular environment? I don't see that on this 16 acres of property. So I'm concerned about that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the right-of-way that's being granted is just the frontage on this property. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct. That's the parcel we're considering this evening, so that is the only piece that would be dedicated.
Okay, so you are talking about the rest of 4.5, the rest of 4 North handling the traffic being generated by not only these businesses, but the apartment complex. You've only provided a very small window of road right-of-way to handle that additional traffic. The rest of 4 North, and I would venture to guess the rest of the traffic will go right to 89. So the bulk of the traffic will be handled by Road 4 North with no improvements. You're going to be talking about hundreds of cars going down that road every day, and who's going to maintain that unimproved portion of the road? Not the trust. The town will have to maintain that as it's being torn up. And I can tell you right now, Road 4 and 4.5 North all have potholes. The asphalt that was put down is coming apart. So if you increase the traffic, you're going to increase the city expense. Somebody's already addressed the water issue. Somebody's got to provide the water for this, and I don't think it's practical to expect the people in Appaloosa Meadows to be forced to live with low water pressure. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Whitcock. Yes, sir.
My name is Alan Mell. I live at 2875 Harrison Drive. With all due respect to Mr. Paul, I'm the 5th house from Road 4. You're the 6th. I just want to echo most of what everybody else has already said. I'm very concerned about the businesses and the multifamily housing, traffic, and the impact on our roads. I was at the town council meeting on September 6th, where Ron Gritman gave a very nice presentation on the status of the roads in Chino Valley and the inability of the town to maintain them satisfactorily. We're addressing a very small portion of our roads, and we're addressing only the very worst ones at this time. Increasing the traffic on Road 4 North is not a good idea. I'm also concerned about the water. Condition of approval number 5 says it may require connection of municipal water and sewer. It doesn't say it will, which leaves the door open for Appaloosa Water to provide the water. Appaloosa Water has been out of compliance with the fire code as far as the fire flow requirements for years now. They had been directed by the Corporation Commission to install a tank and 2 emergency generators to address the fire flow issue. That has not been done. That was well over 2 years ago when they were ordered to do that. The financing approval that was given has been revoked because it expired after 2 years. And I don't know exactly what happened, but the financing approval for the water tank itself was denied by WIFA because it was deemed to be ineligible, and I don't know what that means. But they're not in compliance with the fire flow requirements for the city right now, and I can't imagine what will happen if he intends to provide the water to this new development. We've had a history of non-compliance and changing requirements with this Lava Cara Trust, and that concerns me greatly that that's not going to change. Now, with all due respect to the staff, I don't think that we're going to find that the actions are going to resolve the long-standing conflict between Lava Cara Trust and the surrounding property owners, and I don't believe this group does either. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak? You, sir, in the front. And then you'll be after him.
Hi, my name is Seamus Evans, and I moved here about 5 months ago, okay? My lot is located 4 lots away from this property on Maricopa Street, okay? I've had a lot of experience with decibels and a decibel meter. I worked in a power plant for 33 years where we had to monitor every single day what we did. So we had the meters on property. A very quiet person talks at 60 decibels. A normal person talks between 70 and 75 decibels. So if you're talking on a property line at 75 decibels, it's a lot more than 60, okay? We needed to monitor our decibels. As we started equipment, we had to close down doors on buildings to keep the sound inside our building. So we really did monitor it a lot. We were 4 miles away from condominiums and housings, and we got calls constantly. Yet we were at 75 decibels on our property line. Okay, so I do have experience with this. We chose to buy this property. We bought this property in 2005. We chose it because of its location and the environment at the time, which was nice and quiet, or nice and dark at night. It was nice and quiet and it was nice and dark at night. When we built our house a year ago, there was all kind of restrictions put on us on the amount of light that we could put off our property, which didn't include lighting up parking lots for safety purposes, which what would you be required to do when you put in an apartment building and a parking lot. You can't leave it dark, people will get hurt. You know, there's a lot of open questions on this thing. In 2005, right after we bought our property, we did get notice from the trust of things that he wanted to do on this property. That was the last time we got any notices of anything that was going to happen on this property. The only reason we're here is hearsay. We heard it from people that this meeting was happening. We heard it from other people that he had a community meeting. And they sent out notices to 7 people, 7 properties that connected to theirs. Our property is not that far away from his lot. Yeah, I understand when you come up and you say, well, we only legally had to notify the 7 people around us. But in 2005, we were notified of this meeting. We couldn't make it to the meeting. I got the notice about a week before the meeting. And I couldn't make it up here at the time. But what changed between then and now? Back then, he was willing to tell everybody in the area about what he wanted to do. Well, when people were resistant on what he wanted to do, well, he closed the circle back in. He started notifying less people so that they wouldn't show up to meetings and now. And on this situation, he notified only 7 people. But there's a lot more than 7 in this room. There's a lot more concern on what he's trying to do. You know, like I said, I've been here 5 months, and it's been really nice and really quiet. I have to drive 4 north to get onto the highway. It's not a safe road. It is very substandard, okay? He would be required to dedicate the property in front of his property, and he would put a nice sidewalk and a curb, but it would end right there. What happens at the stop sign? I think it's 1 and 4 north? What happens at that stop sign where when we come to that stop sign now, we have a hard time seeing both ways to cross that road. Who's gonna buy the property around there and clear it out so that you have your view when you pull up to those stop signs? Who's gonna make that road up to standards of handling a commercial property? Will he be required to buy all the property up to Highway 89, to bring it up to a 4-lane road, or to bring it up to a standard 2-lane road with sidewalks and curbs? If he tears it all up to put the sewer line and the water line in from the highway? Or will he just tear it up and fix where he tore up? You know, there's a lot more questions to this thing. that has to be addressed, you know. I personally don't want the area damaged, because once it gets damaged, it won't get repaired. And are you going to issue the police department a monitor, and he's going to go up there and say, yeah, his car idling will put up more than 60 decibels. Okay? Diesel trucks put up more than 60 decibels. You know, that's not a, that number is not correct. You can Google it right now, and the low is 60 decibels, the high is 75, just for normal people's talking. So that's about all I got to say. I really don't want to see the area get messed up.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Evans. Ma'am? Yes.
My name's Debbie Novelsky. I live at 1525 Bumblebee, and everybody talks about how they send out letters to 7 homeowners. When you look at the part of that on the property, number 1 of them is Joe's own property, so that eliminates 1 person. The large parcel, that's 50 acres, that was the proposed mobile home park, is also owned by Lapa Cara Trust, so they sent 2 of those 7 letters to themselves. And the rest of the properties are empty. So the only 2 actual homeowners that are occupied are myself and my neighbor Gary. So I don't, and like the other gentleman was saying last year, I think that they were required to send out letters to within 1,000 feet. So I guess this 300 feet must be a legal, little niche here or glitch that this is the minimum. And like you were saying, the fewer people you notify, hopefully the less people come. So then another big question I have is, where did the 94, 95 units come from? Because I remember last year when the issue for the mobile home park, I guess the minimum requirement for this minimum density is supposed to be half-acre minimum requirement. So when Joe was planning to develop that 55 acres last year, he could have technically had 110 units on it. How do you get 94 units, apartment units, on 6.5 acres? If you are complying with the half-acre minimum, that would mean he would be able to build 13 units. Big difference. I don't know. Somewhere I missed something. But does it change that much from year to year on what is considered medium density on the half-acre building? And then also, I think that before you could ever even consider giving any type of approval, where is an actual site plan showing exactly where everything's going? Where are elevation drawings showing what it's going to look like? Right now, it's kind of like, well, I think I want to do this, and I think it's going to go here, and this is maybe what I'm going to do. For years, when we lived in Southern California, I worked at a firm that did interiors for model homes. And we couldn't get away with not presenting drawings and scaled drawings and blueprints and everything like that, showing exactly what was going to be done. And I just don't think, this is too vague, too soon for even to be considered. There needs to be a lot more study, a lot more presentations, and showing you exactly what's going on. Where is the access going to be? What is, like I said, what's it going to look like? What's the style going to be? How tall is it going to be? And then again, what impact is this going to have on all the neighbors? We all moved to Chino Valley because of a quiet, peaceful, safe, rural neighborhood. And, people don't come to Chino Valley, basically, they don't come for fine dining, you don't come for entertainment, and you don't come for good shopping. The reason you come to Chino Valley is because you live here for a rural lifestyle. And I think that, our beautiful roundabout with the horses and like our insignia for the town, that's what it represents is come, have your fresh air, don't have your neighbors one on top of each other. And that's why people live here and move here and choose to build their homes here. We didn't buy in this area to live next to a commercial property or to live next to apartments. We've all been here first, and Now, all of a sudden, the rug going to be pulled out from underneath us and go, oh, sorry, we've changed, and we've updated it, and too bad, you're going to have to live live with it and put up with it. So anyway, I am obviously opposed to it, and when they're saying how the windmill house was the jewel of, Chino Valley, I live right next door, and I can see that parking lot, and he was only open Wednesdays and Fridays. And I could count on two hands the amount of cars that would be in there. I really don't understand, on a financially why they even kept it open. There were not many people there. And we had gone over a few times, and people kind of come and go, but it's not busy. I've noticed maybe a few times where there'd be a special event, a wedding, and then the Pumpkin Festival was a big disaster, noise-wise, and he was using that little strip along the side of our property for excess parking the first year, and people would be coming back and forth to the cars, and I'd be out in my garden or in my barn with my horses, and I would notice people, they'd go to the car, they'd smoke their joint, they'd urinate against the fence, and I'd be right there. And I thought, well, isn't this great? And then, like he said, you could hear every word from the band, and as the day went on and the more alcohol was being served, the louder it would get and the more obnoxious the people would be. And that's what happens when you open two big public events where it's not really monitored. So anyway, it's been very peaceful and nice since it's been closed down, and I feel like I really live in a rural residential community right now with it being closed down. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Ken Burkett. I live at 2710 Harrison Drive, southeast of the proposed project. I've been here since 2005. I've seen all these things come and go with Joe. Most everybody has already kind of talked about the things I was going to bring up, so I've kind of checked off the list on both sides. The only couple of things I would have and ask you a question on is, have you seen what exactly they want to put on that property yet? I know that there was a supposed community meeting, and from what I understand through talking with neighbors who attended or heard from people who did attend, that it was just kind of a nebulous kind of, this is what we want to do. Is there, as she says, is there a specific plan yet for what goes there?
It is my understanding that that's the next step.
That would be the next
After
step.
the rezoning, the applicant would be required to come back to the commission and the council with a development plan.
After the zoning was approved?
That is correct.
Okay.
Please, go ahead. It's really not an interactive, so go ahead and ask your questions,
Okay.
and we'll address them all together.
All right, the second thing is, or the question is, this is going on to that. If we don't know, then I was going to say, what kind of apartments? I don't think there's a three-story apartment in this entire town other than down along the southern end on 89, and I'm not even sure that those down there are 3 stories. And I can guarantee with this map that they have here, this existing area, where is it, all up in here? There's not a 3-story building in there, and I really doubt that the people who live over there and bought all these properties really want to look at 3-story apartment complexes as they're looking towards the San Francisco peaks and everything else. And, to grow trees that tall to block it, I mean, you're going to be putting some tall trees out there with the winds we have. I can see disasters. I'll give you a little background. I used to work for a police department. I spent 27 years in law enforcement. For 3.5 years, one of the assignments I had was working at crime prevention unit. We would take planned area developments and all the plans, one other step that would go through everything that our city does here, and we would review it for crime problems, calls for service, too close of apartments, too close of neighbors, restricted street parking, that sort of thing. You're in my space, you're on my side of the road, you're in front of my house, that kind of thing, which generated calls for service by the police department. We would probably spend 30% of our patrol time going out to apartment complexes, condominiums, especially ones with HOAs where it was all private inner streets and things. And after we started our program and started saying, nope, streets got to be this wide, you have to have sufficient off-street parking and other things, then our calls for service on those types of disturbance calls as they were plotted reduced by almost 80%. So it was when somebody backs out and hits the car across the street, that's when we would get a call. So I see a lot of the things that Joe's tried to propose here. I think I spoke against the mobile home park because he's trying to put too much in too small an area. I think Joe's best bet here, and even though I even question sometimes if I want to say I support the windmill house, because I did, I ate there a lot until the prices went up. And then, like I say, he has a good thing going. And, you know, in business, they say if you got to go, like In-N-Out Burger, you got a good thing going, they've had it for 56 years, you don't change and try to go too big because you wind up like these other restaurants that have all closed. The thing I would suggest is, you know, well, it's not a question, but, you know, if our general plan has already been gone through and we're just about ready to prove it, now we're talking about a special amendment. And again, that, as it was said there from my experience in the past, that reeks of spot zoning. And it's a problem because then everybody else is going to want it. And anybody, well, you gave it to him, how come I can't have it? Well, you didn't write him a ticket, how come you're writing me one? You know, I tell you, it gets old after a while, especially because you guys, you get the brunt of this stuff. Let me cross off a couple of my things here. I think, like I said, with what we had before, the CUP with restrictions, I don't think 90% of the people were in favor of that with this last go-around as far as opening Windmill House. Mr. Cordovana decided, I'm not going to give you the 25 feet, which, and I don't know if anybody ever explained it, is a right-of-way on demand. In other words, I'm not going to go in there and take it right now and make that street wide. We'll use it if we have to. Is that correct? That's the question. You know, I mean, if we need to widen the road, more so than the other 25 feet for that, we'll do it, but not necessarily right away will the city go out there and expend the money and make that road in. It's if it deems necessary, is what I read in the newspaper. And that's kind of what we had when we had issues as far as widths of highways and stuff. You know, you sign over the property with an agreement that, hey, if we need it, we're going to go in there and put 2 more lanes or a turn lane, or we're going to widen it on the other side. So, you know, I don't know why you would, you know, it's like saying it might rain tomorrow, so I'm not going outside. You know, it might not. So I think that's a mistake on Mr. Cordovano's point. The other thing about if you guys are to pass these apartments, like I said, since there's no question, is this going to be like his last one, 55 and above? Is it going to be high density where you can put anybody in there? Is it going to be Section 8 housing? You know, is there going to be a lot of things that may become very incompatible? Is it going to be, oh, we'll have 95 individual group homes in here? You know, which I know under the ODO you can't do that now, but, you know, what's the general plan on those? So I think there's going to be a lot of questions about that. I mentioned 3 stories. Sewer, there is no sewer over there. The whole complex is on septic systems. For his other developments that he had some time back on the big property, he was going to have to put in a self-contained sewer system, and that was number 1. Nothing else, no other shovel could be stuck in the ground until that was completed. And after 2 years, there was never even a perk test, it looked like, going in through there, which you don't need for sewer system. But the sewer is not, it's way over there on Highway 89 somewhere. And since the campground, the KOA didn't go in, there's no sewer there. So, I mean, the nearest one's probably going to be somewhere around Road 3, maybe, a little bit towards East 1 to get to a pump. So, I mean, that's a long haul for sewerage. And with 95 units, you're not going to be able to put that many septic tanks in there. And it shouldn't be allowed to put that many in there. So there's some concerns there. One other thing here. There was one. Oh, and as far as a center for the community that you can walk to, take a look at this room. And I'm as gray as everybody in here. I don't think most people are going to want to walk that distance in the dark at night with no sidewalks, with drainage ditches, weeds this high on the sides of the roads, to go over there and eat fish or, you know, go attend a family movie, which is the next thing. There's the whole Quad Cities can barely support 2 theaters as it is now in the Prescott area. So he's going to have a theater there to charge, I'm sure, admission to have, you know, family night movies. Nice idea, but not in this neighborhood. In a more condensed neighborhood, sure. Communities like where I used to live in San Diego, sure. If you had a community where you've got 5,000 or 6,000 people within, you know, 3 square miles, a community center like that would be a great idea. But here, I think it's adding fluff to an idea that's probably not a good idea. I would recommend you guys deny this concept, revisit with him, with Mr. Cordovano, the conditional use permits with the restrictions that were placed on it from before. And I think if he were to get back in there, he would probably get some support from the community. As it is, a lot of the people I talked to that quit going there was because they said, you can't trust Joe. You don't know what he's going to do. And they didn't want to support him after that. So, you know, I hate to see that. Windmill House is a beautiful thing, and it really worked out great for what it was intended, but then it became a 7-night or 6-night-a-week restaurant. It became a noise problem. I lived, according to my son's elk rangefinder, 720 yards from his front gate off my back porch. And when that cannon went off that night, I remember that. My window shook. My wife grabbed her gun and said, "Are we under attack?" She was afraid somebody from California found me that I put in prison. So,
Thank you,
other than
Mr.
that,
Burkett.
you bet.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Frank Strassel. I live at 2877 Cassie Lane, and technically I'm the second house off of Road 4 North. Most of my concerns have already been addressed, but I'll throw one out. With not following through on so many things, why would there be any support for approval of the zoning request for this trust? Another thing I'd like to throw out is other people mentioned Road 4 and Road 4.5 traffic that would be affected by this change if it's approved. I would also want to throw in Road 1 West. My house backs up to that. We moved there in 2010. Traffic, I believe, has increased now. Traffic, if this zoning change and development is made, would increase, I think, significantly. There's going to be an awful lot of folks that are going to come down to the corner of Road 4 and Road 1 West, and they're going to go south on Road 1 West to get over 89. They're not going to go all the way over to 89. There's no traffic light, and I think it'll make a big difference. They'll go up and exit onto 89 there at McDonald's where there is a traffic light. So I think that's another issue that needs to be looked at. And the lawyer for Mr. Cordovano said that they had, I don't know, 600 or 700 signatures in support. Do you all know how they got some of them? I don't know about all of them, but some of them. In the water bill, 3 or 4 months ago, they had a blurb sheet that said, will you support our opening, and this is a paraphrase, will you support our opening of the windmill? They didn't say anything about the real reason why they're looking for the zoning change. Will you support the opening of the windmill?
Please, he's speaking, please.
And I think that that's a devious approach because the total picture isn't being presented. I thought, yeah, I'd support the windmill. And then I got to looking into it further and talking with some other neighbors that had lived there longer in Appaloosa too. I thought, holy cow, the money isn't in the windmill, because when I've eaten there, when it was open, there really wasn't that much traffic. There wasn't that many cars in the parking lot. I don't know where the numbers of 25 workers or whatever comes from, but that's not where the money is. The money is going to be in the commercial development, and that's not what is being addressed in the presentation. And so anytime I see a devious approach, it makes me want to say, this should not be. And I hope that you all give that some consideration too. And by golly, I really appreciate all the time that you allowed for everyone to speak. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Strassel. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Anyone at all, this is your last chance to speak.
Do I get to say something?
Not yet. Hold on. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And at this time, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll reconvene at just about 10 minutes after 8. Yeah, so is your associate, but we'll turn back on. Huh? Oh, you're lit. Way to go.
I wish I was lit. I might enjoy this meeting.
I know, I missed my glass of wine tonight, I'll tell you.
The doctor said you can only have one glass of wine, so what do you do?
Turn the
Big
glass of wine.
Big glass.
All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think, Ruth, what we're going to do is I'm going to go down through the list of things that I heard, and we'll either ask you or the applicant to answer some of these questions, okay?
Yep.
One of the, let's see, let's start at the top here. One of the questions asked was where will the water come from for the multifamily residential units? So I don't know if that's a question for yourself or Mr. Cordovano. Can you answer the question where the water will come from?
From Appaloosa.
Appaloosa Water Company, that's the intention, is Appaloosa Water Company?
Yes.
Ruth, is there city water in that area at all? No. It's, how far away is the closest city water, do you know?
I'd have to go look at a map, quite honestly. I haven't looked at that in a long time.
Out by the highway, I would
Yes,
assume?
oh, definitely 89.
Okay. So more than a mile away?
Oh, yes.
One of the gentlemen talked about the mobile home housing rezone that we entertained last year, that we voted down, and I believe that's directly related to the question regarding notification in the area. Those two are kind of tied together. There was more notification in last year's hearing on the mobile home.
Correct.
Age-restricted because it was a larger parcel, I believe. But could you speak to that, please?
Yes, that was a much larger project with a much greater impact on the community than reopening the windmill house would be. And let me talk a little bit about the 95 units, if I could.
That would be good.
The 95 units is the maximum amount that Mr. Cordovano could construct there. Now, that does not mean when he submits a plan, a development plan with the town for staff to review, that staff will approve 95 units because it does not fit in with the neighborhood. The town staff will be looking at where the structures are, the density of the structures, the size, the number of bedrooms, parking available, the height, the design, the exterior appearance, the location on the site. All of those things will be considered. In addition, we will be looking at the number of dwelling units, which would determine whether or not the project would be required to connect to municipal utilities or use Appaloosa water and develop a packaged treatment plant like has been previously proposed and required. But those items all come out of the plan review process. That is the next step. All we are considering tonight is the rezoning. The development of the property, and especially in regards to the multiple family housing, those things all come out of the development plan, which is why we do this process, so we can go back and say, here's all the minutes from the public hearing, these were all the comments. In order for this to go forward, we're going to have to mitigate headlights shining into people's homes, noise that's created, setbacks, traffic, all of these things will have to be mitigated in the final development plan so that the impacts will be lessened on the community and we can address those concerns about making this project fit into the neighborhood.
As a land use planner myself, I have seen development plans come forward with rezoning requests concurrently so that these kinds of issues are somewhat mitigated for the neighbors. There's some level of assurance that certain things will or will not happen. Is that a possibility in this case? That a development plan could come forward with the rezoning instead of them coming independently?
Well, we can't really start one right now, but we can definitely do one concurrent with the general plan amendment.
Okay, so that leads to my next question, which has to do with the general plan and the medium density designation. I think even for myself, I'm a little bit confused about where we are with both the current general plan and the new general plan that Commission passed and will be ratified by the voters in November, correct?
Correct.
If you can just kind of quickly go over again for me where he stands with the current general plan and where he would stand under the new general plan were it to be ratified by the voters.
Both would require a minor general plan amendment for this project to go forward. So the medium density land use designation that the property currently carries, if the new general plan is not approved, we would have to do a minor general plan amendment to accommodate the uses in this plan. The same would carry forward if we did if the new general plan passes, we would have to look at an amendment that would provide community core or mixed-use development type development with the minor general plan amendment. So both are going to require, no matter what happens, we're going to do a general plan amendment. And that has to be submitted prior to, that's one of the things that has to be completed prior to us issuing a business license. So he would get no business license until we have the minor general plan amendment, the right-of-way, and there was one other thing which escapes me at the moment.
The buildings being repaired.
Yes, buildings, yes, thank you.
Can there be a time stipulation placed on the general plan amendment?
No later than November 10th. It has to be filed no later than November 10th.
Of this year?
Of this year.
Is that one of the conditions in the rezoning? Okay. If the commission were to recommend denial of the zoning and council were to not approve the zoning, would Mr. Cordovana still have the option of coming in and requesting that his use permit be reinstated?
He would have that option, yes.
And that use permit would strictly be for the use of the windmill house and its associated uses, I'm
Correct.
assuming?
It depends upon what he requests for the conditional use permit.
But that is still an avenue that Mr. Cordovana could take to reopen the windmill house, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that was asked is the packet that's in front of us today, were you at the neighborhood meeting?
Yes.
Is the request in front of us today different than what was presented at the neighborhood meeting?
The packet at the neighborhood meeting did not include the residential component. We had discussed that, staff has discussed the multifamily residential with Mr. Cordovana shortly after he submitted his application in February. That has been on and off. At the time we did the neighborhood meeting, it was off.
So, okay, so what you're telling me is that this is the first time that most people, including the neighbors, have heard about a multifamily component? Yes. Okay. There was, I did hear Mr. Grind say that headlights still shine into his house on a regular and continuing basis. How would the applicant address that?
Do you want to address that, Mark, or do you want me to? Code requires a 3-foot berm.
A 3-foot-high landscape berm?
Landscape
That's pretty
berm.
typical, right? The
Yes.
3-foot-high landscape berm with plantings on top of it if it becomes necessary?
Correct.
And that is something that could be addressed in the development plan?
It absolutely
when the
would be
development
addressed,
plan comes
yes.
forward? Okay. Does the town require a cost-benefit analysis, or one of the gentlemen called it an impact statement, but it's commonly referred to as a cost-benefit analysis?
No.
Is that a policy statement by the council? Is that an omission, or do we just have never done that, or?
I don't know of any communities in Arizona that do them.
They do them in the city of Prescott.
Do they?
On a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, no, we don't do them
They
here.
don't do them here.
No, and I don't believe they do them in Prescott Valley either.
I would agree with that, but I do know they do them in Prescott. So we accept new development for whatever it brings to us, and we carry those burdens, which are some that council is facing now. How are they going to
Correct.
maintain the roads and things like that? Okay. There were several questions about enforcement of the sound codes. I know you said that there are, the officers carry decibel meters and so on and so forth. Do you have anything else to add to the noise issue? I mean, here in Chino, especially with things so open, the wind can carry sound a long way.
Really, the 60 decibels is pretty standard for this sort of thing. And that's normal conversation, which is what is required at the boundary of this property, which is here, not here. So the noise should be stopping here, not going out to here. So through the final development plan process, we can require more noise mitigation, like we discussed, the berming, to further restrict the sound. Does that answer your question?
I just wanted to know if you had anything else to add, but you're suggesting that other things can be implemented to help mitigate sound?
Sure, yes. Other things can be implemented to help keep the sound down.
They talked about the Pumpkin Festival, which obviously is one of the largest events that's been held at this location, and obviously had one of the biggest impacts to the area because of the volume of people coming in and out. So I would like the applicant to address how they park, or how they will or have parked for this large event, how they flow traffic. Obviously, you know, Mr. Cordovana is asking for this rezoning just for this parcel, but if he's going to be bringing traffic in off of 4.5 North, that's not included in this request. So how will he mitigate the excessive amount of traffic and volume of people coming in and out of this really small area, and where will he be parking people during the festivals?
Just as the property does have an entrance from 4.5 North.
You want to step up to the mic?
Yeah, you need to step, because it's televised, sorry.
Yeah, according to Joe, the property does have an entrance from 4.5 North. Also, right now, there's currently over 100 paved parking spaces in accordance with the Windmill House. My understanding is in the past that they had done parking on some of the open land there. So we would be certainly willing to work with the planning department to come up with some sort of feasible utilization of the property to allow for the parking.
So the Pumpkin Festival, it takes place on this parcel that we're talking about today. It doesn't take place on the parcel to the north?
That's correct. Yeah.
So why would you access traffic from 4.5 if the use or the zoning is only for this parcel?
I think it's just to assist with the traffic flow.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, if there's a lot of traffic, then the question is for ease of use in terms of getting in and out.
Okay, thank you. There were several questions about traffic on Road 4 North. Would a traffic impact analysis be required, Ruth, for the area, the development plan? Would they be required to submit a traffic impact analysis? Or would we simply go on the word of the city engineer?
It would depend upon the number of dwelling units that are proposed.
Is that in the UDC, or UDO, I'm sorry?
No, that would be something that the town engineer would determine.
Whether or not one would be required?
Correct. And part of the review committee for the development plan is ADOT. ADOT has in the past directed Mr. Cordovana to perform a traffic impact analysis.
Has Mr. Cordovana done that in the past?
I don't know that they ever got to that stage.
Okay. I don't know if you can answer this question, but there was a comment that fire flow requirements within the water district were not being met. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Not really. There has been some initial talk with Mr. Cordovana about his water system. He did come in and do a technical review or a site plan review for expansion at the Appaloosa Meadows Water Company. But fire flows and those sorts of things, no.
Is his water company regulated by ADWR?
It's, I believe, that I don't know. I do know it is regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission.
Okay. If he builds an apartment complex, will he be required to put outdoor lighting in place? Is it a requirement, or is it an optional item?
Outdoor lighting on the buildings?
parking
In the
lot.
parking lot. The town has a dark sky ordinance which requires those lights to be reflected downward. So any lights that are put up in the parking lot would have to be shielded so that there's no light above the plane of the light bulb.
But is he required to install parking lot lighting?
I'd have to go back and look at the development standard. My guess is yes. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say yes.
But we have a dark sky ordinance to be part of the development plan.
Correct.
Okay, I think you've already answered the questions regarding density.
Someone had a question about how the densities were calculated.
Yeah, she assumed it was based on a half-acre minimum, is that not?
That's not the case for multifamily residential. It's 1 unit for every 3,000 square feet of gross land area.
Mobile home parks, their density district is different?
Correct.
So do you know what their formula is?
It's 4 to an acre.
4 to an acre,
Mhm.
so.
It is a quarter
So the
of an
last
acre.
proposal, the density.
It was different.
Calculation was different. Okay, can Mr. Cordovana speak to what kind of apartments? Would they be 3-story apartments that he would be proposing?
Well, whatever the code will allow, but at this point in time, the final determination of how many units or exactly how the property's been configured has not been determined.
Okay. Do you know, will the multifamily, will it be age-restricted, Section 8 housing, or group homes be allowed?
It would be 55 and over.
55 and older, but no group homes, no Section 8 housing?
No.
And can you tell us what your intention is to address the sewer? How will you address sewer?
And we would have to work with the town on that. That may be necessary for the trust to construct or put in a package treatment plant, or otherwise work with the city with respect to extending the sewer line. So we'd have to work with the development department on that.
Okay. That's all the questions I wrote down. Does anyone else have another question? Something I have not addressed?
Yeah, I have a question. This is on the
Sure.
I guess.
Speak in the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're going to get in trouble.
I'm going to get in trouble.
Yes, you are.
Some of this was blank pages,
Mhm.
and some of it where it says addresses, they just have phone numbers. Some of these are from like Parks, Arizona, Halden, Ash Fork, Seligman, Scottsdale.
Okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong, anyone can sign a petition. But I'm saying if the address is a phone number, I don't know if it would be a valid, but let's say they're all valid. And it says in bold letters, I would like to see the Windmill House reopen with permanent zoning. And then item 1 says, the reopen of the Windmill House, and it says what it'll do for the community. And it says, the reopen of the Windmill House will do something for employment. The reopen of the Windmill House will attract additional visitors. It all says, reopen the Windmill House. Doesn't say anything about multifamily, doesn't say anything about medical buildings. All it says is, reopen the Windmill House. However, the paragraph between, I'd like to see the Windmill House open, and I support the application for the following reasons, has a paragraph as to planned area development. So I don't know if these people really knew what they signed, but I just bring out the point that if you read it, it just says, reopen the Windmill House. And That's just a comment I throw out for consideration.
So again, did anyone else have a question? Okay, so at this time, we're going to discuss the matter amongst the commission.
I would like to ask Ruth a couple of questions. Sorry to
That's
backtrack.
okay, that's all right.
Missed the cue
I'm
there.
not a fast thinker here sometimes. By doing this zoning, does that give you more authority and more tools to control the development of the property than if we did a conditional use permit?
Well, in a conditional use permit, we wouldn't be talking about doing some of the things that the applicant is doing. However, yes, it would give the town a much greater ability to control how that property is developed. If you were to split that 6.5 acres off, get it rezoned as multifamily, without the planned area development overlay, we have no way to ask for any sort of concessions to the requirements set forth in UDO.
And he has the ability to do that now.
He
am I
can make that
correct?
request, yes.
Okay, so by having the planned overlay, that would cause in the future, for whatever the development of the property would be, he would have to come back with a cohesive plan, which seems to be a big concern. Nobody really knows what he wants to do. He would have to provide proof for the water. He would have to provide a plan for dealing with the sewer. He would have to provide road issues. That all this stuff would be things that he would have to come back to you and provide information for you. And you would have authority and jurisdiction over collecting all of that. And also, if it doesn't meet the criteria or the standards or the intended use, you would have the authority with the zoning change to force him to comply with what was necessary.
Yes, what happens is that he will come forward with a plan that the staff will review, that we make sure complies with code, complies with what's going on in the neighborhood, and then once the final development plan has been approved by staff, it then goes through the exact same process that we've done here. So there will be public hearings here, there are public hearings at town council. Once P&Z is satisfied with it, they make a recommendation to town council. The Planning and Zoning Commission can look at it and go, no, that's too many units, that's too close to the street, it's too close to the surrounding neighbors. We want this one moved in another 15 feet, and we want more landscaping and berming between these structures and this property line. So there is plenty, adequate, or more than ample opportunity for additional public input.
So this zoning change tonight doesn't give him authority to really do anything as far as the development of the property is
Correct.
concerned.
He has to come back and file another plan.
Okay, and if I understood you correctly, he can't start any of these businesses up until he has some sort of plan available to be reviewed.
Correct.
Even though the buildings have been inspected and that sort of, and also the right-of-way dedicated to the town.
Correct. We have to have the development plan in hand.
Okay, so just because the zoning passes tonight doesn't mean anything is going to move forward other than the zoning change.
Correct. The plan has to be approved before we can issue a business permit.
Thank you.
Yep.
As a point of clarification on what was just said, and maybe I was confused because I asked a question earlier about if the zoning was recommended approval by this commission and gone to city council and the city council approved it, I asked, could the existing buildings be permitted for business? And I thought that answer was yes. And now
Sure.
you're saying they need a plan of development before they do that.
There's a list of stipulations before you in the packet.
Yeah.
Those stipulations have to be met before they can reopen for business. One of those is the development plan. One is the right-of-way.
Okay, okay. But if they gave the right of way and got the plan, they could open up the bid,
Once everything's been inspected and all code issues have been resolved.
and they would have to be up to current code.
Current
not-
code.
Not to the code being. they
Not
built in.
2003 code, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go first. Unless someone else would you like to go first?
I would
All right,
like
then
to
you
go
go
first.
first.
First off, I don't have a dog in this race. It doesn't make any difference whether, to me, either way, other than I did like the fish. I have lived in this area since 1969. Most of you, I'm hearing, came in after 2000. It's kind of the case of wanting to close the door now that you're here. I don't think that's right. I also look at this and I see some veterans out here. You know, I see your hats. That we fought for you guys fought for the rights of each individual. Mr. Cordovana owns his piece of property. You own your piece of property. You have a right to not be infringed on. Mr. Cordovana has a right to develop his property. A lot of talk about traffic. With the development of Appaloosa Meadows, do you all not think that you created, you know, a huge amount of traffic on these same roads that Joe now wants to use? So I think we kind of need to look at ourselves and what we're contributing to the community. I do realize that commercial development will bring more tax revenue to the town as far as to then assist in the maintenance of the roads. So I guess I'm leaning more towards Joe and the Cordovana group, but that's my reasoning for it. And so I'll let the next person go.
Go ahead, and I'll speak after you. How's that?
All right. Okay. I want to start with, I think I've been at almost every single one of these public hearings. This is probably my 5th or 6th public hearing. Hearing Mr. Cordovana's various plans that he's brought in over the last, I've been on the commission for almost 9 years. So, you know, Mr. Cordovana has brought some plans before us that we said absolutely not even close for this kind of a neighborhood, this kind of a use. But there have been some that he's brought forward that I thought might have been a good buffer for the neighbors. The fact is, the windmill house is there, and it's probably there to stay, whether it works under a use permit or it works under zoning. I really don't think the windmill house is going anywhere. In the planning world, multifamily residential is a great way to buffer commercial uses from residential uses. Here's my reservation. We don't know what Mr. Cordovana is going to build. He says he's going to build multifamily residential to the fullest extent that the UDO will allow him. That I have a little bit of a problem with. Don't know that 3-story residential is necessarily going to be compatible with the neighborhood. Maybe a 1-story building might be compatible with the neighborhood. In one of his previous requests before this board, he wanted to put in 55 and over mobile home park. I personally thought that was a great compatibility for this neighborhood. It would have been quiet. Yes, the lots would have been clustered together, but they would have been away from the houses. It would have been a good fit. But we couldn't come to consensus on how far away from the houses they would be, so that went away. I'm still not sure that multifamily is the wrong answer, but until I see a more definitive development plan, I am hesitant to approve rezoning. Because once the zoning is in place, and we've seen through the history of Mr. Cordovana attempting to develop this property, We've granted rezoning and we've taken it away. We granted a use permit and we took it away. We granted 2 general plan amendments and we took them away because he failed to meet the conditions. I understand that the staff and that the process is that the development plan come in the next phase, but we still would have to go through the process of reverting the zoning if Mr. Cordovana doesn't perform, because that is a next step. It's not part of this step. I know that development plan can come concurrently with this zoning request. I think it should come concurrently with this zoning request so that we can consider all of these questions that have been asked tonight, and Mr. Cordovana can present his plan. Then if he does not act upon that plan as a course of rezoning, we have the right to put a condition in the rezoning that it automatically reverts if Mr. Cordovana does not perform. That same language was in a prior action, I believe, which is why the reversal of the zoning or the use permit, I can't remember which one, was reverted because he didn't perform on the conditions. So while I'm not opposed to what Mr. Cordovana is proposing, I don't think we have the whole picture yet. And because we don't have the whole picture, I'm a little uncomfortable moving forward with the zoning right now. I'm also a little uneasy about the general plan amendments, because I can tell you as a general rule, just my personal opinion is that if something requires an amendment, it should be a pretty darn good reason for an amendment. Now, there have been a lot of mistakes made along the way. The city gave Mr. Cordovana a building permit to build a very expensive building. He has a lot invested in his property, and Corey's absolutely right. He has the same right to develop his property as anyone else. So we need to weigh whether that general plan amendment is significant enough that it's going to impact the whole community, or is it a good compromise for the area and the way that the area is developing. One of the really big concerns that I have is that while Mr. Cordovana is asking for rezoning on this property, I believe it's his intention to still use other portions of his land that are adjacent to this property for some of his uses. And I have a serious concern about that. Under the original use permit, under the original conditional use permit, he was required to dedicate right-of-way under Road 4.5 North, Road 1 West, and Road 4 North. Under this proposal, he only has to dedicate the right-of-way right in front of this 16 acres. So I don't have a real good comfort level yet with where Mr. Cordovana is coming from, and unless he provides more information and comes to us with a complete development plan, my vote on this rezoning will be a no. Next.
A lot of what I've heard tonight has to do with Mr. Cordovana's ability to follow through with what he says he's going to do, and those comments have all been that he hasn't done so far. I believe that this property should be able to be developed. I think it's unreasonable for any of us to expect that parcels this size not be developed, and the owner has the right to do that. I also believe that folks who bought property around this place had fully well expected to be able to have uses similar to what they have now. I've heard some comments about who's going to pay for the road to get repaired. The town engineer at some point providing a statement of these are the roads we're going to take care of because we don't have money to take care of any other roads. Chino Valley is going to dwindle away or cease to exist as an entity if we continually slap down projects that can bring revenue to the town. That is not the only reason to approve a project. But what I am going to say is if you want your roads taken care of, and if you want services provided by the town, and if you want zoning folks like Ruth to have the ability to get paid to do their job, then revenue is going to have to come into Chino Valley, and that revenue is going to come from the sources of new development. So if we don't develop this at some point, we will not exist as a town. And yeah, the rural lifestyle is great. That's one of the reasons I moved here. I moved to Arizona in 1979. I've seen lots of development. I moved to Chino Valley in 2002. And I enjoy living here very much on my piece of property. I also get to enjoy the band from the winery every Saturday because the wind blows their noise across my property. Some Saturdays that's a good thing, and some Saturdays it's not. I also can hear the restaurant that's over off of Road 4 on the east side, Doreen's, when it's in operation. So I understand your concerns about the noise because I deal with it right to this day. I do have a problem with giving the zoning with the attachment of the high-density part of it. I think that this is not locking Mr. Cordovana down enough. He seems to require some pretty stiff side rails to keep him on track. And I concur with the chairman that we should have this development plan follow through concurrently with the zoning. So I probably am not going to vote yes on this, but only because of the person that we're dealing with. Not because I disagree with developing the property, because I absolutely think that in order for this town to thrive and grow, we need to manage that growth and encourage it to our benefit. Not close it off, watch our roads fall apart, watch good quality people that are employed by the town now move away because they can't afford to live here because we can't pay them anything. So my vote will be no, but only because I don't feel like Mr. Cordovana is locked into a position to where he can't come back sideways at us. Thank you.
Well, I have some concerns. One is, as I said earlier, I see this as a spot zoning, but sometimes that's what has to happen. My concern is the lack of concern that I see from, I guess, the city engineer as to thinking, putting in 96 apartment units and other multi-use area in this section, that the roads will be able to handle it. This type of an item does need a traffic impact study. And I also agree with the chairman that we need to see a development going in step with the zoning rather than after the zoning, because from what I've seen, and I'm the newest person on the commission, by the way, what I've seen, even just with the petition as to how that was worded, and then comments from the general public as to what happened with some of the meetings they were at, I again think that we need to have it more structured and a rigid definition of this is what is going to be developed, not one time there's multifamily, one time it's medical, one time it's age 55, and it's kind of nebulous until maybe the town is too far along the line of their approvals to have any sway as to what happens. So I will probably be supporting the chairperson.
Ruth, can I ask you a question? Sure. I'm not going to assume which way the vote goes, but I can hear what people are saying. So our choices tonight, do we have to act on the request that is specifically in front of us, or can we make a recommendation that the item be postponed until a development plan comes in? Tell me what our choices are, please, before we make a motion.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a conundrum myself. I've done this a long time.
Right.
You said that it was once done before, that was added into the language that with the stipulation of him complying for the zoning, because
you can place
I can't disagree with any.
Yeah, you
any
can
of
place
it.
conditions on a rezoning. And one of the things that we're talking about here is that the development plan and the rezoning come in concurrently, so that if Mr. Cordovana does not follow through on the deadlines and the activities he's required to do, that the zoning could automatically revert. That would be condition of the rezoning. A condition on the site plan that we approve for the project.
Can we put that into our recommendation?
Correct.
to
And
the
you can
council?
also, that language can also be added prior to advancing this to town council. You can amend the stipulations or add a stipulation that if he does not, if there is no final development plan within time certain, then the rezoning reverts.
I like that.
Okay, so we'd do that as a stipulation, not as part of the
We-
motion.
We could add it as a condition. It would be, you would have to state it as part of the motion, that you're adding a stipulation and what the stipulation would be.
Do you want me to repeat that?
Chuck's writing it down.
Okay.
It's late. We're all a little
I know, I
fuzzy
don't
around the
know.
brain.
What did I just say, Liz?
Add a stipulation that we have a concurrent development plan? Or how do you want to word that?
Well, what Ruth is suggesting is that there be an added condition that says that if he doesn't bring a development plan forward within 6 months, a year, that the zoning would automatically revert.
Correct.
For him failing to bring in and get an approved development plan by either a date certain or within a certain amount of time.
Right.
And of course, the development plan will involve another public hearing, which these poor people will have to come back out for again. But none of us really know what he's proposing until we see it, and that's the conundrum that we're in.
Right, and ordinarily, the step is for the zoning and then the development plan to follow almost immediately. However, in this case, giving the, what's the word I'm looking for?
I believe legally we have to act on the request that's in
Yes,
front of us.
you have to
And
act on-
because the request in front of us is to rezone.
Correct, you have to act on that.
We have to act on that, but
You
we
can
can't-
table that
We could, yeah.
till the next meeting, but I would suggest that if you add that language in, that if it's not filed within 6 months, the zoning reverts. We'd have to go back again through council, the town attorney requires that the council would have to take action to revert it.
6 months, does that seem reasonable?
Again.
Ask Mr. Cordovana, is 6 months reasonable?
Can we call it
We can say an approved. Yeah, in fact, I would.
And again, he does not get a business license until we have that and it's approved. So there's some motivation on his part.
We can accept it and add conditions, that's what we're proposing. We have the option of doing that.
And we can do that within the motion.
As long as you state it within the motion, you can add additional conditions to any action that we take.
Okay. All right.
We're waiting for Mr. Cordovana to respond.
Yes, the applicant says that 6 months is adequate.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion amongst the commission before we make a motion?
My only comment is that I really feel that and again, I'm going strictly on what I've been hearing for history of this parcel and the interaction with the applicant. I really feel that before zoning approval is given, that the development plan be going hand in hand with it, so that we're not pulling teeth on a development plan with the zoning already in place.
Well, again, if you amend that motion, then he has 6 months to bring it in. If it's not in within 6 months, staff initiates an action to revert the zoning.
Yeah,
And Mr. Cordovana cannot get a business license to open the windmill house, even if it's been approved, unless we have the development plan approved, we have the right-of-way dedicated, and all of the buildings have been inspected and approved.
So we have two options. We can either approve the zoning well, I'm not talking to the commission here. We can either approve the rezoning request with the additional condition that a development plan be approved by the city council within 6 months of passage of the zoning, or we can deny the zoning based on the reason that we do not have a development plan included with the rezoning, and we deny the zoning because we do not have a development plan to consider as part of the rezoning request. So we can,
But if we did that, then we would have to go through this whole process again to arrive at this same point.
if the council denies the zoning, that is correct. However, I can tell you, we're going to go through this whole process again when the development plan comes in.
I agree, but I'm sort of trying to eliminate
I'm
one more
not disagreeing
trip.
with you one bit.
I know, but what I'm saying is that a lot of the questions we have now will be in place and answered with the development plan, and I see no reason to give the zoning until we have these questions answered.
With the motion, we are not giving the zoning until the plan is approved.
No,
Am I correct?
that's not true.
Okay.
We would be, well, first of all, we don't grant the zoning.
We recommend.
We recommend to the council that they either grant or deny the zoning. But if we make a motion to approve the zoning with the added stipulation, then the zoning would come into effect 30 days from the day the council approves it. And Mr. Cordovana would have 6 months from that time to bring and get an approved development plan from us within that 6-month period. So the zoning would be in effect. And in order for the council to revert the zoning, they would have to take an actual action to revert the zoning, even though the ordinance says it would revert. Is that correct?
Correct.
So based on past performance, I'm not sure that recommending approval with an additional condition is really the right way to go. I think I might agree with Mr. Pasiak on that one.
All that writing for nothing.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we deny the zoning change, and if Mr. Cordovana wants to come back with another opportunity, then that would be his decision.
Can I have you amend that to say that if he requests the zoning, that he include a development plan with his rezoning request?
For the next time? Okay. I make a motion to deny this zoning change, and that if Mr. Cordovana decides to come back to us again for a zoning change, that we have a development plan that would run concurrent with that zoning change.
Can I make a statement before the vote?
You certainly can.
My vote is going to indicate that I'm also not only looking out for Joe's Cordovana's rights, but every other citizen that lives in this community as well.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can find my agenda. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
We have
I move
non-public
we
action
adjourn.
now?
Do I have a second?
Second.
We don't have any.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'm going to tell my wife. She's probably
Did I
sleeping.
call it or what? I said 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
We'll be out of here.
You know,